The Promulgation of Universal Peace by Abdul Baha Abbas. Be the image and likeness of God. This is not easy. It necessitates focalization of all heavenly virtues. It requires that we become recipients of all the perfections of God. Then we become His image and likeness. Well, we're always the image belonging to God. That's the thing people don't quite get about the Semitic way of speaking. But from the Bible it is stated, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." The attainment of this is most difficult. When Christ appeared with those marvelous breaths of the Holy Spirit, the children of Israel said, "We are quite independent of Him. We can do without Him and follow Moses. We have a book. In it are found the teachings of God. What need, therefore, have we of this old man?" Christ said to them, This book sufficeth you not." Well, not quite. It just didn't come to who they wanted. And it conflicted with their conservative traditions. It is possible for a man to hold to a book of medicine and say, "I have no need of a doctor. I will act according to the book. In it, every disease is named, all symptoms are explained, and diagnosis of each ailment is completely written out, and a prescription for each malady is furnished. Therefore, why do I need a doctor? This is sheer ignorance. A physician is needed to prescribe. Through his skill, the principles of the book are correctly and effectively applied until the patient is restored to health. Christ was a heavenly physician. He brought spiritual health and healing into the world. Baha'u'llah is, likewise, a divine physician. He has revealed prescriptions removing disease from the body politic and has remedied human conditions by spiritual power. Therefore, mere knowledge is not sufficient for complete human attainment. The divine teachings of the holy books need a heavenly power and divine potency to carry them out. A house is not built by mere acquaintance with the plans. Money must be forthcoming. Volition is necessary to construct it. A carpenter must be employed in its erection. It is not enough to say, "The plan and purpose of this house are very good. I will live in it." There are no walls of protection. There is no roof of shelter. And this mere statement, "The house must be actually built before we can live in it." Briefly, the teachings of the holy books need a divine potency. Give him that. It is not enough to say, "The plan and purpose of this house are very good. I will live in it." There are no walls of protection. There is no roof of shelter in this mere statement. The house must be actually built before we can live in it. Briefly, the teachings of the holy books need a divine potency to complete their accomplishment in human hearts. In Persia, Baha'u'llah reared and taught souls, established a bond of affiliation among various peoples, and united divergent religious beliefs to such an extent that 20,000 devoted ones sacrificed themselves for the cause of God in the glorious unity of martyrdom. They went out to battle. No differences whatever remained among these blessed souls, Christians, Jews, Muslimin, Kanon Zardosht, all blended, unified, and agreed through the potency of his heavenly power, not by mere words, not by merely saying unity is good and love is praiseworthy. While they were no longer parts of those groups, they had become Baha'is. Baha'u'llah not only proclaimed this unity and love, he established it as a heavenly physician, creating a group of people who want to overturn the government and replace it with their own, and going out to battle. Unity, love, and peace doesn't quite sound like it, does it? He established it. As a heavenly physician, he not only gave prescriptions for these ailments of discord and hatred, but accomplished the actual healing. You may read in a medical book that a certain form of illness requires such and such a remedy. While this may be absolutely true, the remedy is useless unless there be volition and executive force applied to it. Every man in the king's army can give a command, but when the king speaks, it is carried out. This one, that one may say, "Go, conquer a country," but when the king says go, the army advances. Therefore, it is evident that the confirmation of the Holy Spirit and impelling influence of a heavenly power are needed to accomplish the divine purpose in human hearts and conditions. Jesus Christ, single, solitary, and alone, accomplished what all the kings of the earth could not have carried out if all the kingdoms and nations of the world had combined to effect it. They would have failed. It is therefore evident and proved that an effort must be put forward to complete the purpose and plan of the teachings of God in order that in this great day of days the world may be reformed, souls resuscitated, a new spirit of life found, hearts become illumined, mankind rescued from the bondage of nature, saved from the baseness of materialism, and attain spirituality and radiance and attraction toward the divine kingdom. This is necessary, this is needful. Mere reading of the holy books and texts will not suffice. Many years ago in Baghdad, I saw a certain officer sitting upon the ground. Before him a large paper was placed, into which he was sticking needles tipped with small red and white flags. First he would stick them into the paper, then thoughtfully pull them out and change their position. I watched him with curious interest for a long time, then asked, "What are you doing?" He replied, "I've in mind something which is historically related of Napoleon I during his war against Austria. One day, it is said, his secretary found him sitting upon the ground as I am doing now, sticking needles into a paper before him. His secretary inquired what it meant. Napoleon answered, 'I am on the battlefield, figuring out my next victory. You see, Italy and Austria are defeated, and France is triumphant.' In the great campaign which followed, everything came out just as he said. His army carried his plans to a complete success. Now I'm doing the same as Napoleon, figuring out a great campaign of military conquest," I said. "What is your army?" Napoleon had an army already equipped when he figured out his victory. You have no army. Your forces exist only on paper. You have no power to conquer countries. First get ready your army, then sit upon the ground with your needles. We need an army to attain victory in the spiritual world. Mere plans are not sufficient. Ideas and principles are helpless without a divine power to put them into effect." Well, what if the plans are what we're given the means to carry out? But we don't have to wait for somebody to say, "I'm the authority to lead you." Aside from all this, there is need of the stimulus of the joy of the glad tidings in human hearts. Certain spiritual attraction is requisite in order that hearts may willingly take the step forward in the divine cause. We must become attracted to God. The breaths of the Holy Spirit must take effect. Unless this is so, it is impossible for the teachings of God to accomplish in us. An ideal power is necessary. The people of America have remarkably quick perception, intelligence, and understanding. Their thoughts are free and not fettered by the yoke of governmental tyranny. They should investigate reality and not be occupied with ancestral forms and imitations. Consider what Christ accomplished. He caused souls to attain a station where, with complete willingness and joy, they laid down their lives. What a power! Thousands of human souls in the utmost joy, because their spiritual susceptibilities were so attracted to God that they were dispossessed of volition, deprived of will in His path. If they had been told simply that sacrifice in the path of God was good and praiseworthy, this would have never happened. They would have acted. Christ had directed them, wrested the reins of control from them, and they went forth in ecstasy to sacrifice themselves. Abdul Ain was a Persian woman, without fame and importance, unknown. Like all other Persian women, well, not all other Persian women, but when she saw Baha'u'llah, she changed completely, visibly, and looked within another world. The reins of volition were taken out of her hands by heavenly attraction. She was so overcome that physical susceptibilities ceased. Her husband, her sons, and her family arose in the greatest hostility against Baha'u'llah. She became so attracted to the divine threshold that she forsook everything and went forth to the plain of Badasht, no fear in her heart, dauntless, intrepid, openly proclaiming the message of light which had come to her. The Persian government stood against her. They made every effort to quiet her. They imprisoned her in the governor's house, but she continued to speak. Then she was taken and killed. To her very last breath she spoke with fervid eloquence, and so became famous for her complete attraction and the path of God. If she had not seen Baha'u'llah, no such effect would have been produced. She had read and heard the teachings of scriptures all her life, but the actions and enkindlement were missing. Yeah, religion's not supposed to be some armchair study. All women in Persia were enveloped in veils in public. Well, that's never been the case. So completely covered are they that even the hand is not visible. This rigid veiling is unspeakable. Well, it's always been a choice of women to do this. There's never been a country that's required it. People think that, but no. Abdul Ain tore off her veils and went forth fearless. She was like a lioness. Her action caused a great turmoil throughout the land of Persia. There are women that don't even have hijab. And by that, I just don't mean head covering, Again, there's always been that. So excessive and compulsory is the requirement for veiling in the East that people in the West have no idea of the excitement and indignation produced by the appearance of an unveiled woman. Well, if you don't react to women until they're like naked, there's probably something wrong with you. As a male, Abdul Ain lost all thought of herself and was unconscious of fear in her attraction to God. Well, she obviously didn't see it as she obviously didn't believe in any religious sense of modesty, like in the Bible or the Quran that has a head covering, I would think. And, the coverings of the entire legs and arms and that sort of thing in public. Do the Baha'i women go without veils in the East? Answer: it is not possible for them to do so universally yet, but the conditions are not nearly so restrictive as they were. The Baha'i men and women meet together This is the beginning of women's emancipation from the thraldom of centuries. Ratul Ain was really the liberator of all Persian women. And before I go into the 16th of August, 1912, talk at Greenacre, Eliot, Maine, notes by Edna McKenney. Let me remind you that women and men are essentially, if you cover the areas that cause that physical sexual arousal as possible, men and women cover the same areas. Religion calls for the same thing. But men, a long pair of shorts over the bottom belly and the knees, we're good to go. Women, in some cultures, without a headscarf, some cultures have chokers because there's this natural urge to cover the neck, which is then of the spots. It's not complete. There's some spots on the arms and legs, and but it's not the insult that 1 Corinthians 11, 4 through 7 includes, or some other texts include in regard to women. Once it's not forced, how do you insult women into doing something that's even right? It's doesn't usually work. Although I've heard stories of people accepting Islam because they wanted to do the Christian thing. Every subject presented to a thoughtful audience must be supported by rational proofs and logical arguments. Proofs are of four kinds. First, through sense perception. Second, through the reasoning faculty. Third, from traditional and scriptural authority. Fourth, through the medium of inspiration. That is to say, there are four criteria or standards of judgment by which the human mind reaches its conclusions. We will first consider the criterion of the senses. This is a standard still held by the materialistic philosophers of the world. They believe that whatever is possible to the senses is a verity, a certainty, and without extension. For example, they say, here's a lamp, which you can see, because it is perceptible to the sense of sight. You cannot doubt its existence. There is a tree. Your sense of vision assures you of its reality, which is beyond question. There is a man. You see that he is a man, and therefore he exists. In a word, everything confirmed by the senses is assumed to be as undoubted, unquestioned, as the product of 5 multiplied by 5. It cannot be 26, nor less than 25. Consequently, the materialistic philosophers consider the criterion of the senses to be first and foremost. But, in the estimation of the divine philosophers, this proof and assurance is not reliable. Nay, rather they deem the standard of the senses to be false, because it is imperfect. Sight, for instance, is one of the most important of the senses, yet it is subject to many aberrations and inaccuracies. The eye sees the mirage as a body of water. It regards the images in the mirror as realities when they are but reflections. A man sailing upon the river imagines that objects upon the shore are moving, whereas he is in motion, and they are stationary. To the eye, the earth appears fixed, while the sun and stars revolve about it. As a matter of fact, the heavenly orbs are stationary, and the earth is turning upon its axis. The colossal suns, planets, and constellations which shine in the heavens appear small, nay, infinitesimal to human vision, whereas in reality they are vastly greater than the earth in dimension and volume. A whirling spark appears to the sight as a circle of fire. There are numberless instances of this kind, which show the error and inaccuracy of the senses. Therefore, the divine philosophers have considered this standard of judgment to be defective and unreliable. And the Greeks have referred to this idea of God as the one who can see, the only one who can directly see, because they realize that we don't quite see with the eyes. The eyes can be unhurt, and something can happen in the head. It's not as simple as that, but yeah. Or maybe it is. That's part of it. The second criterion is that of the intellect. The ancient philosophers, in particular, considered the intellect to be the most important agency of judgment. Among the wise men of Greece, Rome, Persia, and Egypt, the criterion of true proof was reason. They held that every matter submitted to the reasoning faculty could be proved true or false, and must be accepted or rejected accordingly. But in the estimation of the people of insight, this criterion is likewise defective and unreliable. For these same philosophers who held to reason or intellect as the standard of human judgment had differed widely among themselves upon every subject of investigation. The statements of the Greek philosophers are contradictory to the conclusions of the Persian sages. Even among the Greek philosophers themselves, there is continual variance and lack of agreement upon any given subject. Great difference of thought also prevailed between the wise men of Greece and Rome. Therefore, if the criterion of reason or intellect constituted a correct and ineffable standard of judgment, those who tested and applied it should have arrived at the same conclusions. As they differ and are contradictory in conclusions, it is an evidence that the method and standard of test must have been faulty and insufficient. The third criterion or standard of proof is traditional or scriptural, namely that every statement or conclusion should be supported by traditions recorded in certain religious books. When we come to consider even the holy books, the books of God, we are led to ask, who understands these books? By what authority of explanation may these books be understood? It must be the authority of human reason. And if reason or intellect finds itself incapable of explaining certain questions, or if the possessors of intellect contradict each other in the interpretation of traditions, how can such a criterion be relied upon for accurate conclusions? The fourth standard is that of inspiration. In past centuries, many philosophers have claimed illumination or revelation, professing their statements by the announcement that this subject has been revealed through me, or thus do I speak by inspiration. Well, they're typically going, God doesn't call philosophers as prophets. Of this class were the philosophers of the Illuminati. They're not talking about the Bavarian Illuminati. Inspirations are the promptings or susceptibilities of the human hearts. The promptings of the heart are sometimes satanic. How are we to differentiate them? How are we to tell whether a given statement is an inspiration and prompting of the heart through merciful assistance or through the satanic agency? A question for every Baptist, right? And charismatic or whatever. Consequently, it has become evident that the four criteria or standards of judgment by which the human mind reaches its conclusions are faulty and inaccurate. All of them are liable to mistake and error in conclusions, but a statement presented to the mind, accompanied by proofs, which the senses can perceive to be correct, which the faculty of reason can accept, which is in accord with traditional authority and sanctioned by the promptings of the heart, can be adjudged and relied upon as perfectly correct, for it has been proved and tested by all the standards of judgment and found to be complete. When we apply but one test, there are possibilities of mistake. This is self-evident and manifest. We will now consider the subject of love, which has been suggested, submitting it to the four standards of judgment, and thereby reaching our conclusions. We declare that love is the cause of the existence of all phenomena, and that the absence of love is the cause of disintegration or non-existence. Love is the conscious bestowal of God, the bond of affiliation in all phenomena. We will first consider the proof of this through sense perception. As we look upon the universe, we observe that all composite beings or existing phenomena are made up primarily of single elements bound together by a power of attraction. Through this power of attraction, cohesion has become manifest between atoms of these composing elements. The resultant being is a phenomenon of the lower contingent type. The power of cohesion expressed in the mineral kingdom is in reality love or affinity manifested in a low degree according to the exigencies of the mineral world. We take a step higher into the vegetable kingdom, where we find an increased power of attraction has become manifest among composing elements which form phenomena. Through this degree of attraction, a cellular admixture is produced among these elements which make up the body of a plant. Therefore, in the degree of the vegetable kingdom, there is love. We enter the animal kingdom and find the attractive power binding together single elements as in the mineral plus the cellular admixture, as in the vegetable plus the phenomena of feelings, are susceptibilities. We observe that animals are susceptible to certain affiliation and fellowship, and that they exercise natural selection. This elemental attraction, this admixture and selective affinity, is love manifest in the degree of the animal kingdom. Finally, we come to the kingdom of man. As this is the superior kingdom, the light of love is more resplendent. In man, we find the power of attraction among the elements, which compose his material body, plus the attraction which produces cellular admixture, or augmentive power, plus the attraction which characterizes the sensibilities of the animal kingdom. But still beyond and above all these lower powers, we discover in the being of man the attraction of heart, the susceptibilities and affinities which bind men together, enabling them to live and associate in friendship and solidarity. It is, therefore, evident that in the world of humanity the greatest king and sovereign is love. If love were extinguished, the power of attraction dispelled, the affinity of human hearts destroyed, the phenomena of human life would disappear. This is a proof perceptible to the senses, acceptable to reason, in accord with traditions and teachings of the holy books, and verified by the promptings of the human hearts themselves. It is a proof upon which we can absolutely rely and declare to be complete. But these are only degrees of love which exist in the natural or physical world. Their manifestations are ever according to the requirement of natural conditions and standards. Real love is love which exists between God and his servants, the love which binds together holy souls. This is the love of the spiritual world, not the love of physical bodies and organisms. For example, consider and observe the bestowals of God successively descend upon mankind, how the divine effulgences ever shine upon the human world. There can be no doubt that these bestowals, these bounties, these effulgences emanate in love. Unless love be the divine motive, it would be impossible for the heart of man to attain or receive them. Unless love exists, the divine blessing could not descend upon any object or thing. Unless there be love, the recipient of divine effulgence could not radiate and reflect that effulgence upon other objects. If we are of those who perceive, we realize the bounties of God manifest themselves continually, even as the rays of the sun unceasingly emanate from the solar center. The phenomenal world, through the resplendent effulgence of the sun, is radiant and bright. In the same way, the realm of hearts and spirits is illumined and resuscitated through the shining rays of the sun of reality and the bounties of the love of God. Thereby, the world of existence, the kingdom of hearts and spirits, is ever quickened into life. Were it not for the reality of man, would be bereft of the everlasting bestowals. Consider to what extent the love of God makes itself manifest. Among the signs of his love, which appear in the world, are the dawning points of his manifestations. What an infinite degree of love is reflected by the divine manifestations towards mankind. For the sake of guiding the people, they have willingly forfeited their lives to resuscitate human hearts. They have accepted the cross to enable human souls. The cross is the example. To enable human souls to attain the supreme degree of advancement. They have suffered during their limited years extreme ordeals and difficulties. If Jesus Christ had not possessed love for the world of humanity, surely he would have not welcomed the cross. Well, the cross was necessary for the hero God part of the story. He was crucified for the love of mankind. Again, that's the weakest part of the story, and we don't need to. If a person's killed or not, it's still the same. Consider the infinite degree of that love. Without love for humanity, John the Baptist would not have offered his life. That actually doesn't there's not really issues logically with that part of the story. Are other traditions. It has been likewise with all the prophets and holy souls. If the Bab had not manifested love for mankind, surely he would have not offered his breast for 1,000 bullets. If Baha'u'llah had not been aflame with love for humanity, he would not have willingly accepted 40 years imprisonment. Observe how rarely human souls sacrifice their pleasure or comfort for others. How improbable that a man would offer his eye or suffer himself to be dismembered for the benefit of others. Yet all the divine manifestations suffered, offered their lives and blood, sacrificed their existence, comfort, and all they possessed for the sake of mankind. Therefore, consider how much they love. Were it not for their love of humanity, spiritual love would be mere nomenclature. Were it not for their illumination, human souls would not be radiant. How effective is their love? This is the sign of the love of God, a ray of the sun of reality. Therefore we must give praise unto God, for it is the light of his bounty, which is shown upon us through his love which is everlasting. His divine manifestations have offered their lives through love for us. Consider then what the love of God means. Were it not for the love of God, all the spirits would be inanimate. The meaning of this is not physical death, nay, rather it is the condition concerning that which Christ declared, Let the dead bury their dead, for that which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Were it not for the love of God, the hearts would not be illumined. Were it not for the love of God, the pathway of the kingdom would not be opened. Were it not for the love of God, the holy books would not be revealed. Were it not for the love of God, the divine prophets would not have been sent to the world. The foundations of all these bestowals is the love of God. Therefore, in the human world, there is no greater power than the love of God. It is the love of God which has brought us together tonight. It is the love of God which is affiliating East and West. It is the love of God which has resuscitated the world. Now we must offer thanks to God that such great bestowal and effulgence has been revealed to us. We come to another aspect of the subject. Are the workings and effects of love combined to the world, or do they extend on and on to another existence? Will its influence affect our existence here only, or will it extend to the everlasting life? When we look upon the human kingdom, we readily observe that it is superior to all others.